Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
I should turn the mic on. It's Monday night, November 11th, 2024. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 6 p.m. on the West Coast, 8 a.m. in Singapore, 12 noon in Sydney, Australia, and here where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis, it's 8 p.m. Central Time. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters Tonight. This is episode number 175. You're keeping score at home. I tried to do a little extrapolation today, figure out when episode 200 is going to be, but I can't do that. Hope things are well with you. Hope you had a good weekend. It's Veterans Day today, and we should honor our veterans. So our guest tonight is Susie Moore. She's the deputy managing editor of RedState.com. Fabulous writer. Love her stuff. She's she might be a veteran. I got to talk to her about that. Now that I think about it, I've read a lot of her things, and she does allude to being in the. I think she was in the military. We'll find out. Any rate, I didn't know that, and so I was gonna. If you've listened to the show, my sign off is good night, Esperanza. Good night, Nickeldani. Good night to you wherever you are. That's my sign off. So let me explain to you. I'm going to go through this once, never again. Esperanza is my mother's real name. Uncle Donnie is the patriarch of my mother's, not my mother's, Freudian slip, my wife's part of the side of the family. So, and I get asked all the time, both on and off the air, people ask, are you talking about Donald Trump? No, I'm not. Uncle Donnie is a real person, and he's not Donald Trump. So anyway, he was a Vietnam vet. He lives in northern Wisconsin. I tried to get him on the show. Didn't want to come on. Doesn't want to do it. I understand. When I got married, my wife said, I've been doing public eye jobs my entire life. And when she married me, she said, I will marry you under one condition. You will never, ever drag me on stage, ever. And I've never done it. I've never done it because she doesn't want to have anything to do with that sort of thing. And she married somebody who's kind of the opposite. Anyway, Don didn't want to come on. So God bless him. He has an interesting story. He dropped napalm in the Vietnam War. He apparently was very, very good at it. It's an art. It's way more of a skill than it is a science. And he came home from Vietnam, was up on the roof, fixing the roof of his house 6 weeks after he came home, fell off the roof, and he's been paralyzed from the waist down ever since. So it's a very ironic and terrible story, but he's managed just fine. And the real amazing thing is he just retired. He has a very physical job. He runs a small pulping company. So he farms wood. And him and another guy go out into the forest, and he does not have the use of his legs, but he's got all this equipment rigged up so he can down a tree. And he can do pretty much anything he wants. It's really pretty amazing. He's an incredible individual. Anyway, I don't blame him for not wanting to come on. I don't. He told me straight out, talking about the war is too painful. So, and it is an interesting thing because at that time, there in the late 60s, for the war, there were huge student protests. And it turns out, in retrospect, the students were more or less right. And that's the reason people have never given them that hard a time. Now, unfortunately, the people who came home from Vietnam got an enormously bad time from the public, which is really, really awful. But we basically lost 55,000 people there for basically nothing, and I think that's, there's a big part of especially the Republican Party right now that doesn't want to deal with forever wars. And I think that's one of the reasons, we lost a whole bunch of people, a whole generation of people and nothing was accomplished. So anyway, maybe we'll talk to Susie about that too, because like I said, I had to pull that out of my rear end just as we're talking here, that I think she is a veteran, but we'll find out. At any rate, She's our guest tonight, Susie Moore from RedState.com. We're going to play a little commercial. We'll be back with her. Stay tuned, please. God, Jim, it's like, will I ever lean hard, let her run this thing? Holy crap. Hi, all. I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. Susie, are you there?
I'm here.
Joining us from her home in St. Louis, Missouri, Susie Moore, the Deputy Managing Editor of RedState.com. So I don't know how much you heard of the introduction, Susie. You're a veteran, right?
I am not. I am not.
Your husband is?
No, my father was.
Your father? Oh, okay. All right. I thought maybe I've read something in some piece you wrote where you're talking about being in the Marines or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just...
Oh, no. Not me. I cannot lay claim to that, although I'm eternally grateful for all those who have served.
Where are you from originally?
St. Louis.
Oh, all born and raised there, huh?
That's right. That's right. Grew up here and have spent most of my life here.
So you went to... You're a licensed practice attorney, right?
I was for almost 30 years. Correct. I've let it go inactive now that I'm doing media. But yes, I practiced law for close to 30 years.
And you were prosecution, right?
No, I did civil litigation. So I defended lawsuits when people got sued over things.
How did you get from there to writing politics?
It's it was a little bit of a long journey. I've always been interested in politics. I majored in political science in college and always followed them. So it's always been kind of a passion of mine. I've always enjoyed writing, and as blogging kind of became more and more of a thing in the 2000s, I got kind of involved in the conservative blogosphere, if you will. And little by little, as I got to know people involved in it, I started following shows like yours and interacting with the hosts and getting to know them. And pretty soon they were having me on as a guest, and it just went from there. So I knew the managing editor at Red State back in 2017, and I reached out to him and just actually offered my services as a copy editor. I was still practicing law at the time, but I was reading it. He brought me on, and I've been here ever since, and I also do radio. So somehow I morphed.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I just said I morphed. I morphed from the legal world to the media world.
How did you actually start at Red State as a copy editor, or they put you writing right away?
No, I started as a copy editor and soon started writing as well. But yeah, started out as a copy editor.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because I knew that you did some substitute hosting at a News Talk STL.
Yes.
And
correct.
So I knew you knew like kind of how to do this, because not all writers can talk. I don't know if you ever figured that out.
This is true. Yeah, no, I have a little bit of experience. I had my own podcast for about 5 years, way back in the day, and now I'm doing I'm the sub-in host at NewsTalkSTL. So whenever one of the main hosts is out, I'm the substitute.
How often do you do it?
Oh, probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a month.
God, good for you. That's fantastic. You got a very varied gig.
I do, and I love it.
I believe it.
As I have said before, I get to do what I love and love what I do, and I'm really, really appreciative that I have these opportunities.
So let's talk a little bit about the election or the aftermaths. So here's what I find interesting, and you're Brandon Morris from Red State wrote about this, and David Strom from Hot Air, who's a regular guest on the show. There's a writer who can talk. He's like fantastic. He's written about this too. They wrote separately similar articles about the fact that, melting down about losing an election is one thing, but both those guys were talking about the fact, and I think you maybe alluded to this in some of your writing too. We almost have a mental health crisis here in America. People have gone crazy. And okay, maybe it's not the majority of the public, but still, just even this relatively small percentage of people, it's really disturbing. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, I very much do. It's something that's making me very mad right now. I'm not mad at the people that are upset. And I'm setting aside the performative people, the ones that feel like that's their job to stare into the camera on TikTok and put on a show for us all.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the average everyday, your regular old Democrat voter who is genuinely upset, not just that their team didn't win, but like they're genuinely concerned. They are fearful right now, and the fear has been put into them by the MSNBCs of the world and even the Oprah Winfreys of the world. And it's I don't know, it's maddening to me. I'm somebody who I was a Democrat until my mid-30s. And most of my family is still on that side of the aisle, and it hurts me to see people who we're so siloed in the information that we get anymore that there are people, millions of people on the left that have no idea of the background and the factual basis for a lot of the things that we on the right believe in and stand for. And it is really frustrating, although I'm not going to advocate censorship like those on the left have.
I'm sorry, you're not going to advocate what? What was that?
Censorship.
Oh, yeah.
Censorship. No. That's their answer to it, is to shut the other people up.
No, I totally agree with you. We can't do that. Now, I was a liberal until my mid-40s. And the thing that really I find amazing about this whole thing is that Donald Trump's been president once already. It's not like it's not like, well, we don't know what's going to happen. That's the thing. Right. I can't, like, what? Go ahead.
But you see, Jim, he was a stealth Nazi that whole time. And now it's just really going to come out because he no longer has the guardrails. That's the theory, the working theory. But I do think that was one of the things he best had going for him in this election, is that we had a side-by-side, back-to-back administrations to compare in terms of the results of them. And while there's a lot of people that may take issue with his personality or some of his policy items, they know what things were like 4 years ago, and it's just no comparison.
Yeah, my former boss, Jeff Meyer, who owns Conk News, has said, and I think he has a point here. He said, in the long run, in retrospect, the fact that he's doing non-consecutive terms is actually worse for the Democrats than if he had done 2 in a row, because now he has a break, and he knows, he's been able to think with retrospection, knows what he has to do, and this is going to be way more devastating for them than if it had been if he just won. In 20.
I think so too. I think it's really going to put the lie to a lot of their, a lot of their predictions and a lot of the fears that they've raised, because I think we're going to see, now he's going to face headwinds again. I mean, it's inevitable, but I think we're going to see probably a very successful Trump term too. Yeah,
so do I. There's word today that he's already thinking about completely canning the Department of Education. I don't know if you saw this, but
yeah, I did. I think there was a series of videos, or a video that he put out like a year ago under the heading of Agenda 47. He was already running, but he kind of went down the laundry list of things that he's planning to do. And I think that Department of Education video is from that series, but it's just now getting circulated because until relatively recently, he was kind of like kicked off of some of the social media sites. And now people are kind of renewing their interest in what he's actually saying his agenda is, aside from the, dreaded Project 2025.
Yeah. And what did I see today? Oh, it's Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire. He says he's pushing to be the czar of Project 2025.
Right. Yeah, he's having a little fun with it. There is plenty of fun to be had because the left, so many on the left take themselves so seriously and have forgotten how to laugh at themselves and just at life in general. And it's so easy to get their goat.
And the thing is, the Project 2025 thing, no, I don't know anybody on the conservative side who paid any attention to it at all. I mean, it was just something.
No one did. It was like a 1,000-page think tank policy paper that no one really spent time reading.
Yeah, it's crazy. Getting back to this thing about the mental illness thing, there's an article in New York Post today. Do you have children? I hope you don't mind my asking.
No, I don't mind at all. I have a daughter. She's 22.
Okay, I don't have any children myself, but the New York Post ran this thing, and I think this was the Post editorial board, if I'm right, about the fact that liberal moms are really doing damage to their kids by pushing this stuff about this doom and gloom into their heads. And I can't think that isn't true, especially after COVID,
Yeah, there's this weird phenomenon that we've seen. It really does seem to have increased quite a bit over the past decade or maybe decade and a half, of particularly people on the left sort of catastrophizing everything and drilling that into their kids, whether it's, dreadful fear over climate change or COVID or now the Trump presidency. And I think it also kind of goes hand in hand with the trans phenomenon. There's this weird, I don't know, I'm not an expert, a mental health expert, but there's this weird psychological thing going on where parents are projecting onto their children these psychoses to, I think it's like Munchausen's almost.
Yeah, that's correct.
And maybe it's because of social media. You get the bonus points for, the social media clout for either yourself being a victim of some, circumstance or affliction, or having a child who fits that category, and people somehow are chasing social clout by turning their children into neurotic messes.
I I had your stablemate Terry Christoph on last week, and we were talking about the fact that now I got to collect my thoughts because I'm 69 years old and I'm losing my train of thought. All right, what were we talking about? I asked her, she had children, and she said she did, and oh God, oh man, Susie, somebody should take me out behind the back shed and put me down. That's what I think. I can't. I cannot.
Happens to all of us.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But I will say this. So the thing is, I'm a baby boomer, smack in the middle of that generation. I'm 69 years old. And also, now that I remember it, this is exactly what Terry and I were talking about. So we were talking about the fact that I don't know about you, but my parents, our parents basically ignored us. And there's this very famous essay by Dave Barry where he talks about the fact growing up in the 60s where his parents could basically all parents completely ignored their children, and basically
right.
And Terry said this too. She said she's the 8th of 8 children, and she said she was ignored for that reason, and she said it was actually a great positive, and I think it's a great positive too. And now at some point, I don't know when it was, this whole helicopter parenting thing started, and now these kids, and even the kids in college, it's just like they're so freaking fragile. I don't understand. How did this happen?
It happened. I mean, the generational break is there between Gen X and millennials. I'm Gen X too. I'm the same age as Terry. We're very close to it. And we were basically, I always joke that we were the last of the feral children because we were put outside, once it was light out and told to come home at dinner time.
That's
and
right.
We all did fine,
That's right.
And yet, so the millennials, I think, are where we started to see that everyone gets a prize, that sort of mentality. It kind of pervaded the education system, the public education system particularly. So I don't know if it's boomer parents that did that or what brought that on. And I'm guilty of it too, to a certain degree. I've tried to make sure that I instilled in my kid a sense of independence and strength, and she does seem to have that. But I know it's just so different as a parent now than what my experience was as a child. Part of it's that we're all connected via cell phones. It's a very, very different world. And unfortunately, the downside of that is you're not loving your kids when you're helicoptering and hovering and fixing everything for them. You're actually coddling them and enabling them and preventing them from being independent, successful people.
Yes. Well, love takes many forms, and sometimes it's like what you don't do, And I think we should point out to the younger people who are listening to this. So when you talk about like get lost and come back for dinner time, that was literal.
Yeah, no, that was really what happened.
That's right.
And they didn't really know where you were because they didn't have your cell phone GPS location on you. They might check in with another neighbor parent.
Yeah.
If you were over there, if they really needed to get a hold of you, but no.
Right.
We were free range.
I know it's absolutely crazy. But so I wanted to ask you this whole thing about these moms hurting their kids. Now you're a lawyer or former lawyer, whatever you're trained. Is there, other than the free speech issue, is there anything that's actually like illegal about this? I mean,
not unless you cross over to the actual abuse. And you could say that this is, a form of abuse, but I don't think it would stretch into something from a legal standpoint. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because, obviously parents have the prerogative to raise their children as they see fit, and they should have that prerogative. We're just, unfortunately, we keep reinforcing these negative behaviors, and I do think a big part of that is social media, which of course I partake of, on a regular basis because it's kind of my line of work, but it definitely has its downside, and I think that's just kind of reinforced a lot of these bad behaviors.
I actually can make a claim to being one of the original developers of social media. It's a very long story, so we won't get into it.
So it's your fault.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. I regret my involvement, and I think, there are some very positive aspects to social media, but in the long run, on balance, I think it's more harm than good. That's my personal feeling.
Yeah.
I actually regret what I did. So,
yeah, it is. There is definitely a downside. It's kind of, removed people's ability to like, they don't know how to interact with other people like in real life anymore. It's all very, I don't know. It's done a number on us as a society. I agree.
Yeah. Speaking of doing a number, do you think that Joe Biden actually sabotaged Kamala's or attempted to, or actually did sabotage Kamala's campaign? Do you think, that's, that thing about the garbage?
Yeah.
Some of the stuff was so perfectly timed for negativity. It was like, I can't get over the fact that I just think it was deliberate.
It's hard not to draw that conclusion, particularly you're right. The garbage comment, his remarks, right, literally on top of her speech there at the ellipse.
Yeah. Completely wiped it off the map. Nobody paid any attention to that. Right.
And I mean, within seconds, it wiped it off the map.
Say again? I'm sorry. What was that? I didn't catch that.
Within seconds, it wiped it off.
Oh yeah,
the map.
right. That's right.
It was almost instantaneous, and I have to believe there were some of those instances. I think some of it was just Joe being Joe and being gaffe prone, but that timing of that and a couple of the other things he said and did, I don't know how you could interpret it as anything other than trying to undermine her.
Yeah.
And whether that was his calculation or Jill's calculation, and he just followed along, I can't really say for sure, because sometimes he seems like he's still with it, and other times he does not.
I had Mark Tapscott from the Epoch Times on the show a couple of weeks ago. Well, no, it was actually right before the election, and we were talking about this too. And he mentioned the fact that, so what I ran by him is I have two people talking in my head, and I literally two different people. They're both editors, and one said to me, one of them saying, no, and there's no coincidences in politics. Everything's deliberate. And the other guy says, no, Jim, you give these people way too much credit. They're buffoons and they can't plan anything ahead of time to save their life. But what I was actually talking to him about Joe Biden. Now, I don't know, Susie, if you've had a lot of people in your family with dementia. I've dealt with.
I had my father.
Yeah. Okay. So I have too, more than one. And so I don't know if you notice this, but people, when they're sliding into dementia, they have good days and they have bad days, and eventually the bad days take over the good days, and that's when you're really, you've gone off the cliff. But I don't think Joe is at that point yet. I think he still has more good days than bad days. So I think he totally knows what he's doing, at least the majority of the time. You know.
I think you may be right about that. You know, he certainly, like when he gave his speech the other day in the Rose Garden, it was like, wait, where's that Joe been? Because he really seemed to be with it. So
and he was ebullient
just in the earlier stages of it, right? It was like that a load had been lifted off of him, and whether it was, you know, it's no longer his responsibility. He only has 70 more days to finish out his term, and now he doesn't have to feel bad about inflicting Kamala on the nation for the next 4 years. So he definitely seemed to be pretty upbeat after that.
He's like the only Democrat who's actually seems happy.
You know, I will push back on that just a little bit. You may have seen it last night. There was a photo circulating of Kamala sitting on the ground with her grandnieces playing Connect Four. And she had a glass of wine off to the side. She had a genuine smile on her face.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? She looks like she's kind of happier. I mean, I think she did want it to a certain degree, but I think on some level she's probably relieved.
Yeah, I do too. Because let's face it, she wasn't up to doing the job, you know. And I think she knew that too, you know. I mean, she's not totally stupid. I have doubts about her intelligence, but you know, I don't know. Or you tell me, is she totally stupid?
No, I don't think she is totally stupid. I think she's maybe not as well informed as she could and should be, given the roles that she's had. I think she's managed to work her way up the ladder in a way that hasn't required her and really forced her to have to do the work. And even as a vice president, I expected her to step into that role and be much more of a formidable presence than she was for the first 3.5 years. I thought we were going to see the Kamala that we saw in the Judiciary Committee, and we didn't see that. And I kept wondering, does she even want to be there? Because she doesn't really seem like she relishes the role. She doesn't seem like she wants to do any of the work required. So when, she became the nominee, I kept thinking, okay, are we going to see the star turn now? Is she going to actually step up into it? And she didn't. She didn't over and over again. She knew she needed to prepare for these situations. And the only thing she came out prepared for was the debate. She was well prepared for the debate, but that was it.
Yeah. That's that. And in some ways, that's the only real thing in the campaign that went right. But she didn't get a bump out of it because people look back kind of a few days later and said, well, she didn't answer any of the questions,
No,
that followed her around.
Very surface level.
Yeah.
It was just about the optics. Yep.
So what do you think about all the fact that the Democrats didn't see this coming, or so many of them didn't? I don't understand. It's like, to me, I mean, I was, and I constantly do this. I second guess myself. I predicted this almost perfectly. I mean, right down the only thing I didn't predict. I thought Kamala was going to win Arizona. That's it. Otherwise, I got the whole thing right. I got the whole thing right. And I'm thinking, I'm just a guy sitting in my underwear in Minneapolis. I'm reading the same polls you are. What is it? Why didn't they understand? That part I don't get. I don't get it.
So I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with those information silos. I mean, as part of my job, as much as it pains me sometimes to watch MSNBC or CNN or to read those websites or WAPO or any of the left-leaning media, I have to do it for my job. So not only do I have the perspective of having once been a liberal Democrat, but I actually have to see what they're saying right now. And I think that there are people that have gotten more and more comfortable just hearing, their confirmation bias, just hearing their beliefs affirmed and not really challenging themselves. I actually had a conversation with a family member last week who was not pleased with the outcome of the election. And the first thing I asked them was, because they wanted to talk. And I said, I'm happy to talk. And I said, where do you go for your news? And they told me, and then I asked, I said, were you shocked by the outcome? And they said, no, not really shocked, disappointed, but not really shocked. But then I talked to somebody else who was genuinely shocked. And that person was only getting their information from MSNBC and maybe a little bit of The Daily Show and Stephen Colbert and that sort of thing, when they weren't just tuning it out.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I think were caught off guard because they weren't looking at, for instance, the Real Clear Politics average, or they weren't reading any of the polling. But if anyone was following the polling all along, they had to know it was close.
Yeah, also, the other thing is, if you read between the lines, I think it was pretty easy to see that it wasn't going to be close. There's that too, So, I mean, I did a pretty Monday night before the election. I did a solo show here where I did a pretty big analysis of the polling, and it was. If you look between the lines, the pollsters wanted to keep it close because it's within their financial interest to do so. They want to, after the election, they either want to say, well, we were right, or they want to say we were wrong, but not by much, So they kept it close. This was Nate Silver's thing. He was talking about this on a podcast about the fact that he said they're really doing it a disservice. They're keeping it close. He said it actually isn't that close, and he was right. Well, I mean, I suppose... people have said this is a blowout. I don't know if that's actually true. I mean, he won the popular vote by 2 points. Okay, he won, that's fine, but it wasn't like, 20 points. And and also it's been pointed out that the down ticket ballot stuff, although it did go in the Republicans' direction, that wasn't a blowout either. I mean, we're basically going to hold I predicted we're going to hold the House pretty much with the same 4 people, or the same 4 votes. And it looks like that's what's going to happen, So
yeah, it does.
So I don't know if it was
the big difference, of course, is the Senate.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if it's an actual blowout per se. So maybe that's an exaggeration too. I don't know why. Okay, I'm bringing this up because you're talking about your friend.
Right.
So if you're I live in this is where I'm sitting in Northeast Minneapolis, is one of the single most liberal districts in the entire United States, and everybody I know is liberal Democrat. Everybody. Except for Strom, who actually lives here too. Except for him, me and him. That's it. So
these are the 2 lone holdouts.
Say again, what?
You're the 2 lone holdouts.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's right. No, I flipped and I pissed everybody in my family and my friends off. So
oh, I know how that goes.
Yeah, I bet you do. But my point is, I don't know anybody here who will watch Fox News, even though nationally Fox News has more Democrats watching it than MSNBC does. I mean, they're just blowing it out of the water. It's freaking unbelievable. Their ratings are mind-boggling. And so I do wonder about that. It's like people say, well, you can turn on the television and watch another channel, and people don't. I don't know. It's like, so here's a question: how do you solve that problem?
It's a very good question, and I think it's one that we need to be taking a very close look at. On an individual basis, the only way I know how to do it is to invite the people in my life to read some of my work, or to listen to me when I'm on the radio, or to have a conversation with me and ask me some questions. I think when you go about it from a non-confrontational, like, let's just have a conversation, let's, maybe even employ the Socratic method, where you're asking the other person questions and asking them what the basis is for their beliefs and stuff, instead of just telling them what the talking points are. So on an individual one-to-one basis, that's the only way I know to go about it. On a larger scale basis, all I know to do is to keep putting out, obviously our red state is a conservative site. We don't make any bones about it. It's not a mystery that we're a right-leaning website. But we also, try to take very careful pains to make sure the information that we're putting out is accurate. And I feel like those of us who live in the media sphere on the right side of the aisle have a responsibility to not only share our perspectives, but to make sure that we're doing the legwork to make sure the information we share is accurate.
But I do have to hold it.
There's no real easy answer to it.
I do have to ask you though. So you have relatives who don't read your stuff.
Oh yeah.
I would think that just because they're related to you, they would occasionally read your stuff for no other reason. But no, huh?
Very rarely do they. Now, there's times when I write stuff that's not as much political that I will share because I think that they'll be, they will want to read it, but very rarely do they. And they don't listen to me on the radio. They don't. No, I think it would bother them too much.
Yeah, and I shouldn't complain because my wonderful liberal wife, who lost her liberal husband, and she doesn't understand how that happened. I've been doing this show. I've been doing this show in various incarnations for about 5 years. I don't think she's ever listened to 5 minutes of it.
Right? No, I mean, and I get it. I do. I definitely understand. It's hard, but sometimes it's like, it'd kind of be nice to have a little bit of support.
Yeah. I know it's your family. And did you catch this thing about this woman from Yale, who's the psychiatrist that said you should cut off that's so sick. I can't even.
It is sick.
I mean, Jesus, I don't have any I just don't talk about politics with my family. That's all, and that solves the problem. I don't.
No.
I don't need to. I don't know about you, but I don't need to. Maybe it's because I have this outlet, and maybe you do too. But
right. There is that. There is definitely that. No, I've always maintained I will never ever put politics over my family. My family is my family, and I love them to the ends of the earth. They know that, and they reciprocate. I mean, as much as we disagree on some things, they approach me about these things carefully and delicately and with love, not with, how could you? And seeing somebody out there and exhorting people to cut friends and family out of their life when we're all still reeling from COVID, where people were so isolated, and to just perpetuate that is disgusting. And I'm seeing it predominantly come from the left. I can't abide that. It makes me furious.
Yeah, I think they would say the opposite, but I agree with you. I think it comes primarily from the left. I know. And from what I understand, like Pew Research studies, polls have shown that too, that liberals are much more willing to cut people out of their lives for disagreeing with them than conservatives are. But I don't know,
Well, I will say this. I follow and interact with far more conservatives than liberals. And as far as people I've seen recounting this situation, it's almost all conservatives saying this liberal person I know has cut me out of their life, not I'm cutting these people out of my life. So
right.
Anecdotal, but it does seem to be very one-sided.
Right. Well, Susie, I got to tell you, I'm never going to cut you out of my life ever.
Well, thank you.
So here's the deal. I want to thank you for coming on. So I hope we can do this again. I love your writing.
Absolutely.
I'm going to we'll post on our show blog. We'll post a link to your author page on Red State. And
appreciate that.
You take care. Okay.
Thank you, Jim. You too. Have a great evening.
Well, thank you. We'll talk to you soon. All right. See ya.
All right.
Bye-bye. That's Susie Moore. She's a deputy managing editor of redstate.com. Now we have Jennifer Oliver O'Connell from Red State comes on here regularly too. Matter of fact, we have her on about once a month, and we have people on from hotair.com. Well, I was going to say 3 of them, and now 2, and we're going to run a commercial, and then I will tell you when we come back why I just said that. So stay tuned here. Hi all, Jim Peters again for Conk News. Let me tell you one of the greatest things about Conk News. It's free. It's completely and totally free. You don't need to register. You don't need to log in, subscribe, none of that stuff. Sure, they run a few ads on the front page, but if you're an old fogey like me, you might actually appreciate this, because when you check out Conk News at conk.com, you'll probably notice that it's the closest thing to an old-fashioned hard copy newspaper that you'll find online. The latest up-to-the-minute news from 75 high-quality sources collected every 3 hours, all laid out with photos and headlines directly from the articles. And when you click on a story, you go directly to that story. No ad page, no interstitial page, none of that stuff. This is the way online news is meant to be. And did I mention that it's completely free? Seriously, how much of the stuff in America is free now, right? That's of quality anyway. So check this out for yourself. It's at conk.com, CONK.com. Conk News. Part 2 of Jim Peters at Night. I'm Jim Peters. We just got done talking to Susie Moore from redstate.com. You can call me now. I will take your phone call, 563-999-3435. That's 563-999-3435. And if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, we got to scroll at the bottom of the screen with that number on it. You can also text me too at 408-458-5088. It's the best telephone number on the planet, 408-458-5088. So while I'm waiting for your phone calls here, if we get any, I got a few things I'm going to blab about. This is the part 2 of the show. I always talk about kind of the crazy, stupid crap. First of all, I want to know who I got to think now. Who was on the show and brought this up about the fact that what is you ever watch CNN or MSNBC? You know, Susie was talking about that, watching that stuff. What is with these giant panels of 15 people? What it's like? Did you not go to broadcasting school? This doesn't work. You know. Now, what I was talking to her about is really true. I'm alluding to this now, but I'm going to be more explicit here. CNN's ratings are in the toilet. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I mean, on an average evening, Fox News draws 4 times more people, not 40% more, 400% more. It's unbelievable. They're drawing, CNN in prime time is drawing less than 500,000 people a night. Now, in cable television, not even cable news and cable television, anything less than 1 million people is basically zero. So they're gasping for air, and they just keep doing the same stupid crap over and over again. So, but MSNBC does the same thing. These giant panels of people. And if you watch Fox News, you'll notice they don't ever have more than 5 people on the screen at a time, and usually only 4. You got the show The Five. You know, and then outnumbered, you got 5 people. Okay, fine. 5. That's it. That's the maximum. 5. Got it? No, they don't get it. I don't understand. It's like, like what producer are they paying $200,000 a year to come up with this crap? It's unbelievable. Okay, so going on, I like to talk about the UFO stuff here. Now, I don't know if you know who Nick Pope is. Nick Pope has been he's been on Ancient Aliens like 1 million times. He's this guy. He's a British guy who used to work what was called the UFO desk at the Ministry of Defense in Britain for the UK. He did that for about 8-9 years, I think it was. And that's where his claim to fame is as a UFO expert. But he's quite an opinionated guy, and he's very well spoken. I understand why people want to have him on TV, because unlike me, he's not talking all over the place and trying to grasp his thoughts. He doesn't say and ah. He's very good at talking and saying what he thinks. At any rate, he said, all right, I got to back up now, because talking about not saying what I think. It's like what I meant when I said before the break that we used to have 3 people from Hot Air on here, and now we only have 2. Our friend Jazz Saw passed away last week. He was the weekend editor at hotair.com, and he was also the UFO guy for Salem Media. He wrote all the UFO stories for the entirety of Salem Media, and also wrote for the debrief.org and also mysteriousuniverse.org. His gig was conservative politics and UFOs, and that's pretty much been my gig too for the last few years also. So I always called him my brother from another mother. Now we're going to do a memorial show for him either on Wednesday or Thursday. Ed Morrissey, his boss at Hot Air, is going to pre-tape something where him and I are going to tape something in the afternoon about Jazz, and then we're going to the crux of the show is going to be Jazz's last interview here, which was August 29th. He used to come on the show about every 6 weeks. So, and the last interview was entirely about UFOs. I specified that it would be. So he knew a lot. And we're going to miss him a lot. I mean, he was just a great guy, fantastic guy. So that's either going to be Wednesday or Thursday this week. Haven't figured out yet when. At any rate, The only thing that Jazz and I ever really disagreed with on basically anything was what's called disclosure of the UFO situation, which is that the government would actually tell the populace that, yeah, the extraterrestrials are here. Now, he maintained that he thought the public was ready for this, and I maintained that I wasn't sure. And it wasn't even just Americans. I thought, well, if we tell Americans, we tell the world, and I don't know if even if the Americans can handle this, I don't know if a lot of other parts of the world could. So that was the only kind of slight disagreement he ever had. Nick Pope has come out and said just recently, on a podcast, he said, I was for disclosure. He agreed with Jazz until COVID came along. And he said, well, the world did such a bad job handling COVID. I'm now starting to seriously doubt whether they can handle finding out that the aliens are here, and he's got a point. I still don't know either. And that on this one small thing, Jazz might be wrong, but I love Jazz to death. I really did. He was a fantastic guy. So we're going to do that memorial show in the next couple of days. Anyway, I thought Pope has a good point. And I never thought about it that way, too. Really, the world didn't handle COVID at all. I mean, it was just, and in retrospect, it was basically just a bad form of the flu. Now, I'm not trying to, I know people died from this, and I'm not trying to belittle that. But the thing is, people die from the flu, too. As a matter of fact, in 2018, 80,000 Americans died of the flu. That was the all-time record. Now, yeah, and it wasn't until the end of the COVID pandemic that COVID overpassed that. So yeah, there were more people that died of COVID, not much. I can't remember what the actual statistic was. And also, the way they counted those deaths is also highly suspect, too. So I said this. We started doing this show, or a version of this show, for Conk News. I was the editor-in-chief there in April of 2020. We started doing it. Of course, the pandemic started, and if you're going to put a date on it, it'd be Saturday, March 10th is when the entire world decided to lock down that weekend. And I remember that distinctly because I was supposed to be in an important event that night. It was canceled. So we started the show about a month later, and I started collecting statistics. I'm getting statistics from the CDC and the state of Minnesota website because we're here in Minneapolis. This isn't really a local show, but I thought, and I mean, also Minnesota with the Mayo Clinic and the University of Minnesota hospitals is pretty. I mean, you don't get any better healthcare in America than you do here. That's one of the great things about living here too. And I started keeping these statistics, and we were just like the next month, May, where I'm 4 to 6 weeks into this, and it's becoming pretty clear that this is a disease affecting the old and the sick. And I've said this the entire time that basically there were 4 pandemics. If you were over 70, COVID was out to get you, and you better get a vaccine as ASAP because you're going to die. I'm exaggerating slightly, but that's basically true. If you were between 50 and 70, you had a decision to make. It was like that's touch and go. If you were under 50, there basically was no pandemic. There wasn't. And yes, I knew 2 32-year-old people who were in excellent health. They didn't know each other, who died of COVID. And they actually did die. They actually did die of COVID. This is not any one of those statistical things where the government marked at that. They actually did. But the thing is, there's still outliers. There were statistical outliers. If you were under 20, you shouldn't even get a vaccine. The vaccine is more harmful than COVID. I think in the entire pandemic, I think there were only something like 80. I'm pulling this out on my rear end here, so forgive me if I'm wrong. I think there was only something like 80 or 85 people under the age of 20 that died of COVID during the entire thing. It was like, no, and the fact that they're insisting that young kids get a vaccine is nuts. It's absolutely nuts, because there's no doubt that even if the vaccines are safe, there was such a small chance of young children dying of COVID, it's not even worth the trouble. You're literally taking a bigger risk taking the vaccine than you are not having it. So that I'm bringing that up because I'm talking about what Nick Pope said, and that is Nick Pope has a really good point. If we couldn't handle this, if the world couldn't handle this, can the world handle Donald Trump getting on a podium and saying, "Oh, by the way, the extraterrestrials are here"? Can we handle that? I don't know. one of the missions I find in doing this show is I'm trying to prep you, the public, to this is going to happen eventually. Because I will tell you right now, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind the extraterrestrials are here. I don't know if they're living here. There's all sorts of stuff like that. They have bases here. I don't know about that, but they're definitely coming here. That's for sure. That's absolutely for sure. And not just one race either. I'm starting to think that a lot of scientists are starting to think this too, that the universe is actually teeming with life and even intelligent life, that it's freaking everywhere. So, and that brings me to the other thing I got here today too. So, Popular Mechanics ran an article this week called, and by the way, if you're interested in scientific stuff, Popular Mechanics has become an excellent magazine. It really is. It's fantastic. And I hate to say this because they've always I thought they were owned by the same company. Maybe they were, they aren't anymore. It's better than Popular Science. It is. And Popular Science is pretty good, but Popular Mechanics is better. They run all sorts of really interesting articles. They're well written for laymen, and yet they're still scientifically based. Any rate, they got a guy there who wrote an article, and the title is "Aliens Are Breaking the Laws of Physics to visit us on Earth." It's about the fact that no one can explain, no human can explain how these things fly. Now, when I mean these things, they're using specifically as examples the stuff that the Navy's been tracking for a couple of years, and that these pilots have been dogfighting with over off the coast of California. That's what they're talking. That's specifically what they're using, because those are by far the best documented cases. Now, these things with they're called shaped like a Tic Tac. Actually, they look like propane tanks. That's probably a better way to put it. They have no wings. They have no exhaust. They have no visible means of propulsion, and that they're flying all over the place. Like the one of the statistics they cited is that the Nimitz on its radar said one of these things dropped from 80,000 feet, and we have no planes that fly up there other than maybe the SR-71 Blackbird and a couple others that fly that high. For all practical purposes, no planes fly at 80,000 feet. That drop down from 80,000 feet to 50 feet above the ocean in basically a second. And if that's happening, you're going 14,000 miles an hour. And we don't have a plane that flies 14,000 miles an hour. And so the real question is, I put this in the description for the show tonight, and that is, if we can't do this, then who is it? And that's the obvious thing. We got a call. I'm going to take it.
Hey,
Hi,
Jim. This is me too. Or Think.
Think.
Sorry.
Hi, Think. How you doing?
Hey. Oh my God. I've been wanting to talk to you about UFOs or extraterrestrial life.
Yes.
I just found out about the Dyson sphere. Do you know about the Dyson?
Oh yeah,
sphere?
yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Dyson sphere, for any listeners, is a device that encompasses a sun, and that's how that society would get energy.
Yeah.
They're actually extracting it from the sun, and so they make this sphere around the sun. And so a lot of astronomers are starting to look into space and see these black dots, and where a sun should be. Like a sun should be a white light, but what they're seeing is a black, like a black circle in place of that white circle that should be there. And they're saying that that's a possible Dyson sphere. That it could be that civilization is already doing it, and they're seeing a lot of these. Basically, they don't understand what it is. Why is it a black circle instead of a white circle? And then they're saying that could be a Dyson sphere. So these civilizations are actually doing that type of stuff.
Yeah. You go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say that's pretty interesting. And one more thing before I'm pretty sure you're going to elaborate on that. But I heard the United States went to the moon 6 times. Right. I think the last time was in 1973 or 72.
Right.
But I've been hearing this conspiracy theory that there were 2 other attempts that they didn't publish. And the reason why is because they found something on the moon on the 6th attempt, and they didn't share that info. And the other 2 attempts, they went back to further find out what it is. And I thought that's pretty interesting in terms of the UFO thing.
So,
I'm sorry, I just was rambling.
So
Go ahead.
I don't know. That's all right. I don't know if you've heard this, but there's a lot of people who think that the military, not NASA, but the U.S. military has been going back and forth ever since. That after the sixth one, and I think it was 72, like you said, Apollo 17, that they've been numerous trips since then that have been completely classified. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if there's any way to find out, but that's been a long time rumor. So the thing I want about
so
go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
no, go before you forget.
Okay, because I will, because you know I'm old. I'm old and fat and forgetful. So the thing about the Dyson sphere, what you were talking about, there's a rumor going around right now that people in Britain have talked to people in the U.S. military and have said that the U.S. military scientists now have confirmed that they have confirmed that there's a intelligent civilization on another planet, not from those people coming here, just by, like you're talking about, telescopic observation, that they've now confirmed this, but they don't want to tell the public yet. So, and based on what I know about our telescope capabilities now, I could see that happening, especially if it was relatively close. You have any thoughts on that?
You know, I want to know more. I don't have thoughts on it because I don't think there's just enough evidence yet for it. But so we live in a type 0 society, right? A civilization. All we know how to do is basically get fuel from limited sources on our planet,
Right.
which is the big source right now is fossil fuel.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. Once we reach level 1 type society, we're going to be tapping into all that stuff before: fossil fuel, nuclear power, and all the devastating things on the earth, like hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes. We're going to tap into that energy and utilize that. And once we figure that out, we're going to start getting more energy from the planet itself. But with unlimited amount of energy, we could possibly do damn near anything, I think. So people that think that a Dyson sphere is not possible, it's because you're thinking in terms of a type 0 society. We just don't have enough resources because we don't have enough energy to get to that level. But once we slowly move up and we realize we have unlimited amounts of energy, the possibilities become almost endless.
And
does that make sense?
No, that not only makes sense, you're absolutely right. Because here's the deal: we already know how to fly faster than the speed of light. We know how to do that. The reason we don't do it is because it takes a ridiculous amount of energy. We can't literally tap into it. Now, I was just about to talk about this when you called here, about the fact that there's people now who think that there's a guy named Robert Schroeder, and he's a scientist, and he thinks he's figured out how UFOs fly. And he says that basically they have nuclear fusion reactors. And he's come to this conclusion from all the eyewitness testimony about people who've seen these things. Because if you've seen, especially circular UFOs up close, they all seem to act certain ways and have certain characteristics. Now, we're 50 years away from nuclear fusion, even like on a primitive commercial basis. But we will do that eventually. And once we do that, then we will basically have unlimited energy, because I don't know if you know anything about fusion, but basically it runs off water. It's like you feed water into it and it makes electricity. That's basically, I won't get into it's the opposite of nuclear fission, which is what we have now, where you split atoms apart. Nuclear fusion is when you force atoms together, and that also creates energy. Way more energy, but it's way, way harder. So, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, once the problem is, it's an energy issue. It's not really a scientific issue per se.
That's correct. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's right now. I think scientists are theorizing way ahead of what we're capable of doing, and that's only because we just don't have the resources in terms of energy to accomplish that. What they are already putting together, all the mathematical formulas and theses all are in place. It's just our technology is just not catching up quick enough to that.
That's
But
correct.
eventually it will. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing. No, go. You go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, a lot of people don't believe that art is an important thing. I don't think art is important. But I do know that before scientific theory and before mathematics and everything comes down to paper, like a formula, there's an artist creates a concept, and people work off of that and eventually make that a reality. And I'm starting to see artists these days, in terms of movies and paintings and stuff, think highly advanced things, like the waves that like in Dune, for example, where there's an alien that's using spice to bend time and space so that they can travel to that. Does that make sense? Like, we can't do that now, but there's artists that are thinking in terms of stuff like that, and eventually a scientist will take that concept and put it down to paper and create a formula for it. Well, and I'm just using Dune as an example.
No,
go ahead.
Here's another example, and that's Star Trek. You know, when Gene Roddenberry came up with Star Trek, they decided, well, we have to come up with some way to get to planets easily, so we have to be able to fly faster than the speed of light. So they came up with this concept called warp drive, right? Well, I mean, you're talking about, this is about kind of like life imitating art here. I mean, warp drive is now a solid theory. A guy named Mexican physicist named Albuquerque has figured out how to do this, how to fly faster than the speed of light by bending space in front of you. And once again, the only reason we can't do it is we don't have enough energy. But on paper, he's figured it out. And so, but when Roddenberry came up in the 1960s with this concept for Star Trek, they just pulled that out of their butt. They had no idea, you know? And so you do wonder, if it ever occurred to you think that, I'm starting to think that if someone can perceive a problem, the solution already exists. I'm really starting to think that.
Yeah, and I agree with, I think so. I think we are unlimitless in what we can do. It's just given enough time and generations. I think we can literally become anything. So, the pyramids, like our current society right now, 2024, after Christ, AD, that's the time period we live in. We use machinery as our technology, but I believe, so the Earth is supposed to be almost 6 billion years old, all right? Yeah. So for us in 2,000 years to have create so much, I mean, I'm talking to you, I don't even know where you are. You're really far from me, and I'm talking to you on a computer right now. Whereas back then, they couldn't do stuff like this. You know, they would have to physically travel probably months, like from your location to my location to travel. And that's this is in 2,000 years. Now imagine 1,000,000 years ago.
Well, hold it. I got to interrupt you. You couldn't even do this 40 years ago. I mean,
that's right.
You know, it's right. Like, Jesus. I mean, I was working on the web in the 1990s, you know, in the middle when it just started. I mean, we couldn't do shit. And now we got packets flying all over the place. It's unbelievable. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And I believe in the young Dryas theory, where a comet or some event happened here on the Earth that wiped off the majority of humanity. So if you go back in time, like I said, the Earth is almost 6 billion years old. And now imagine just 1,000,000 years of that 6 billion years for humans to evolve to an incredible amount of technology, not utilizing machinery. They knew how to do things. Just look at the pyramids. How did they build that? I mean, they didn't find any plastic. They didn't find any steel. How did they move that type of stuff? So they had a technology that we don't know about.
Right.
So their technology went a different route. Well, where am I going with this? What I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to say is that I'm sorry. I went on a tangent somewhere.
That's okay. I'll pick up on this because you're talking about 6 billion years of the Earth. So Danny Sheehan, I don't know if you know who he is. He's this lawyer who's representing Louis Elizondo and a lot of the other guys who are UFO whistleblowers. He says he's been saying some really outrageous stuff lately, but the thing is, he's connected and he has a sterling reputation, so it's hard to discount it. But he said that apparently the U.S. military knows that there's one species of extraterrestrials that's 2 billion years ahead of us. So now, like you said, we've only had electricity of any working order on this planet for 150 years, right? We've only had cell phones in our pockets for less than 20 years. Can you imagine 2 billion years from now what we're going to have? It's like, and then so people say, well, people can't fly faster than the speed of light. Well, God, you give enough time, you'll figure it out. I mean, I can't even imagine if you're 2 billion years ahead of us, your technology would be freaking it'd be magic. That's what it would be.
Well, it might seem like magic, right?
Yeah, well,
But
right.
with
Yeah.
unlimited amounts of energy, and like we were talking about, like these scientists and artists already have these visions in place. Once we get the energy, they can make it possible. So, like we are a type zero civilization. Type one would be us tapping into all this energy from the planet, like the tornadoes I was talking about, the hurricanes, earthquakes. We would probably be using flying cars in that type civilization. But if you skip to like a type six civilization where there's so much energy now, and it's basically anything you want. Do we even need our physical bodies anymore?
Yeah, that's right. Do we?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
hold
so
it. If you're
that-
at 6 after
ahead.
2 billion years, what number are you then? 20,000, 22? I don't know. It's like what, it's like it's almost hard to believe. You're even talking about like if you were a million years ahead, 2 billion? I mean, Christ almighty. It's like it's mind-boggling, but the thing is that will probably happen to us someday unless we don't blow ourselves up completely. But I don't know if we'd kill everybody, but
Yeah, I don't think we would blow ours. It's possible, but I do fear a catastrophic event might do it. Or whatever wiped off because I believe that there was a society a long time ago that was probably multiple societies in the past that have gotten to a similar level of our technology in terms of going. They might have went a different path, but their technology was super advanced where they could move things that are really heavy or maybe even fly. I don't know. That's just yeah.
But
So,
there's increasing evidence that you're onto something there. I mean, the archaeologists find stuff that's older and older all the time that makes no sense. It doesn't fit into the current timeline of what they think humanity was. So, and also we pretty much figured out now that after certain my thing is, okay, people say, well, the Egyptians had electricity. Well, then show me a toaster. They'll show me something that runs off of it. But if you go back far enough, like 50, 100,000 years, nothing would survive. Nothing. That no physical object would survive in any. So I mean, I think what you're saying is not beyond the realm of possibility. That's my point. I believe it is
Yep.
possible. I mean, you're talking. I think you'd have to go back a long, long way, like maybe 100,000 years. But I don't see any. There's might have been a society on this planet that completely died off or whatever, and there's no evidence of it now. None.
yeah. I personally think there are multiple societies. I mean, the whole young Dryas theory, where a comet hit the Earth and wiped off the civilization, almost wiped off all the civilization of humanity that had built up to that point, and had just basically wiped them off. And that would explain a lot of the flood stories and stuff like that, according
Yes,
to
it would.
yeah. So if that doesn't happen to us right now, I think, and we make it to 1 billion years, right, or even another 1,000 years or 2,000 years, I think we would be extremely advanced.
Yeah.
Probably so advanced that we could block those whatever that catastrophe that destroyed the previous civilizations. We might be able to stop that. So the theory is that a comet hit the planet, and that's what caused the ice age to melt, and then the huge flood, and all these people died.
Right.
Maybe in 1,000 years we prepare for that to come, which is what I don't know who wrote that three body problem.
Oh yeah,
book,
right.
but
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, but they kind of went in that route as well in that book, where that a comet's going to hit the Earth, or the Earth is going to rotate and the planets eventually going to hit each other or something like that. If we could solve issues like that, and I think we can in 1,000 years, I think we could do that. We might.
I gotta tell you, I think we might solve that in 100 years. I really do. I mean, you look at how quickly stuff is. All right, just talking about your cell phone. The cell phone in your pocket is about 1,000 times more powerful than all the computers the Department of Defense had like 30 years ago. That's how quickly this has come. Now, I've been working on the web for 30 years. I still remember in the 1990s, servers were unbelievably expensive, and there was something called optimizing code, which no one pays any attention anymore. It's an archaic concept, because the idea was you had to strip out all the useless BS in your code, because it was just clogging the server down. Now servers work so fast and are so powerful, nobody has to pay any attention to that anymore. I had a friend of mine who predicted this was going to happen, a programmer. He said, no, you just wait. 20 years from now, no one's going to have to do any of this. And he was right. That's like, and that just happened in 30 years. I mean, it's like, I think you give it, unfortunately, I won't live to see it. Maybe you will, but I think you give this 70, 80, 100 years. I think we're already going to be able to shoot asteroids out of the sky. I really do.
Yeah. Or yeah, exactly. It's shooting. That's a possibility. But I hope we figure out wavelengths. I hope we figure out how to use wave technology, where we learn the wavelengths of space itself, where we can bend it. Yeah, like Einstein says that space is like waves. Hopefully, we can understand that and start utilizing that to better us. Instead of shooting down an asteroid with nuclear bombs, which the radiation or the particles, the debris might harm us. Whereas we could use waves to probably push it to a different way. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know totally
I hope we
what
go
you mean.
that route, but
I know totally what you mean. We're starting to figure out that what we thought was the vacuum of space, that there's all sorts of stuff in there we didn't even know. I mean, people talk about dark matter that's hiding. There's a possibility now that dark matter doesn't exist, because it turns out that if you reconfigure some formulas, maybe you don't need it. But still, the fact of the matter is, there's also a theory called free energy. And free energy is supposedly literally just energy that's out in the vacuum of space. And I've always thought, well, there has to be something out there, because otherwise the universe would collapse up in on itself. If you literally, it was literally just nothing, what's to keep all the whole thing from falling in? I don't know. So that's just my personal feeling, but no, this is this is a very interesting time, and I want to get back to the thing also you're talking about too, about that fact we are theoretically way ahead of what we can actually do. I mean, there's no doubt about that. We know the warp drive thing. There's all sorts of stuff. I read every day about all these theories that people are basically proving. The thing about multi-dimensionality has basically been proven now. It's like, well, we can't go there. We don't have the resource, like you said, we don't have the resources to do it, but we figured it out, so it's just a matter of time, I suppose, before you have the resources. Getting back to that Dyson sphere thing, the thing is, all right, people say, well, how would you build a sphere around a sun? And that seems ridiculously daunting, but you're right. You give us 1,000, 2,000 years, it'll probably be child's play. I mean, there's a very distinct theory right now, and the thing is, people are going to laugh at me for saying this, but the fact of the matter is, there's some considerable evidence to point to this, that the moon is entirely artificial, that it was towed into orbit by some other civilization and for other uses, and that it's not natural at all. So you're talking about an entire body, heavenly body that might be fake. So I mean, if somebody can do that, why couldn't you build a sphere around the sun?
Yeah, yeah. It might seem a little ridiculous to us because, like, how do we get even close to the sun, right? Because without burning up or something like that. But I think once we reach like maybe a type 2 or type 3 civilization where we have more resources because we have more energy, I think we could use AI or even create robots or, AI to me will never be a intelligent being. AI to me will always be a tool, like a hammer
Yeah.
or a screwdriver. That's how I see AI. So we would probably most likely utilize some sort of AI to build this sphere around the planet around the sun for us.
Yeah.
We'll use, yeah, and that's how we create it, and that's how I think we would create it. But uh, there are theories about time travel now, right? I mean, it's not a joke anymore. Like how you were talking
No.
about, well, what is that? Like, different universe. I forgot.
Oh,
The Marvel universe always
yeah.
talks about this, parallel universes, right?
The multiverse or the extra dimensional
Yeah,
universe. Yeah.
yeah, the multiverse. They're starting to, like you said, they're really starting to look into this and starting to see that it might be a possibility that there is a universe very similar to us, maybe exactly like us with no differences.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some like us but with subtle differences, like very very little subtle differences. But time travel is also another one where they're thinking that it's extremely possible for us to travel in time, where we can change things, but then we would create a dimensional universe off of that, a different timeline. So you cannot go back in time and basically change your timeline. You could go back in time and create a new timeline. That's all. That's the current theory right now. So Back to the Future, where they went back in time and he changed his life and his family. It's a little bit more complex than
Yeah.
that, but time travel is possible. So in a type 6 or type 7 civilization, they're understanding that already because they have the energy to create machines or manipulate waves or whatever they come up with. They have the energy to do that, and so they're traveling in times and creating different types of worlds.
Yeah,
We might look at it like time travel, but they're looking at it like a science, like a string or
Yeah.
something like that.
Think
If
that
that makes
there's
sense.
this is once again, there's people who are theoretically way ahead of everything. And I think this is Harvard, but I'm not really sure. There's a US university where there's a professor who says he knows how to build a time machine, but it's very interesting. Here's the way his time machine would work. It would be like a phone booth, or it'd be like, a small room or something like that. And the thing is, so as long as the power ran through this thing uninterrupted, for let's say you turned this thing on and it ran for 70 years, right? As long as the power is uninterrupted and running, you could get in this device and go to any place in that 70-year period, backwards or forwards. If the power shut off, it'd be done. The machine won't work anymore. But he says he's trying to get money to build this because he says he can make it work. Now, this is a real physicist at a real university. This is really amazing, and I don't know why, but my gut tells me that would really work. In other words, it's literally like almost getting on a subway car. So you get on, and as long as this thing's been running, for as long as it's been running, you can go at any time back and forth during the period that it's been on. That's time travel. It's crazy, but he says he can do this. He's looking for money to build this machine. I just find this people are doing some really, really amazing stuff. I mean, you're absolutely right. Humans, we figure shit out. We do. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I think we could damn near As long as we can think it, I think we could do it. I'm pretty sure we could do it as long as we can think it. Now, it won't be exactly like how we envision it. Like, let's say at one time, man, imagine they can fly. I mean, we can't fly physically without things yet, but we can fly. We have created machines to make us fly.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I yeah, I think we could do whatever we put our minds to. And this is going to sound really extreme, but well, how you were talking about death and stuff earlier, I think at once we reach a higher civilization number, maybe a type 3 or type 4, we might be living almost forever
Yes,
in those civilizations.
that's
Yeah,
right.
we might not die. We might be a being that lives forever.
There's
But
people.
I don't know.
There's people who've been abducted who say the extraterrestrials have told them that they live for 20,000 years. Now they have bodies, so if they get in an accident or somebody shoots them, they die. But as long as they take their natural lifespan is 20,000 years. I can imagine that happening. I can. I mean, if you know anything about the aging process, there's a whole bunch of people now that think aging is basically disease, and so if we cure it, there was an essay written in Omni magazine. This is going back 20, 25 years. And somebody wrote about the fact that, and about what would happen if somebody came up with some sort of drug or injection that allowed people to live like till 400 years. And I actually don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility, about how society would have to change if people were living that long. And it would. But the thing is still, I mean, we'd manage, I mean, what would you do? Let me ask you, what would you do with your time if you could live for 400 years?
Oh my God.
You probably wouldn't be in much of a hurry, would you?
Yeah, I definitely won't be in a hurry like I am now. That's for sure. And constantly, but then again, you have to ask yourself, like, how do you live? Do you constantly have to eat a certain way, live a certain way? Real quick, I was listening to you talk to your guest earlier, and then you said to her, you were talking, and you suddenly forgot what you were talking about, right?
It's terrible.
And you're like, I'm old now, or whatever.
Yeah.
So this might be a little bit on a tangent, but before the World War II, Russia had took a whole bunch of these people that had Alzheimer's disease, right? And they took them onto this island and they starved them. It was a study to see what happens when people get don't eat, and the ones that were starved for months on end, their memory would come back. And so after the study, I think before World War II, I like with Hitler and all, the people just didn't care about life. So they treated people like much more evil than how we look at people now. But back then, their studies were like that, where they would just lock people up and just don't feed them. But anyway, when they stopped feeding them, they realized that these people were starting to remember again. And that's when they formulated this theory that it was the sugars blocking the bloodstream, pushing the blood to their brain. So once you starve yourself of these sugars and fats that clog up the bloodstream, then the bloodstreams flow properly and the blood goes to the mind properly, and then you could think clearly again. They say that they were saying that Alzheimer's and loss of memory happens because the bloodstreams and the arteries were getting clogged up with sugars and fats, and that's why a lot of older people would lose their memory because of that.
Yeah, now I don't know if you've heard this, but and this made the news, but not a lot of people heard it. I can't remember which drug. I think it's Pfizer, but I can't remember one of the major drug companies. They say that they have come up with a cure for Alzheimer's, and they're running it through tests right now. So now this is going to be really interesting. Obviously, it's not, it hasn't been run through tests yet, but they said it looks promising, and they think this is going to work. However, that said, though, I've heard the same theory you have that the problem is you got a bunch of crap clouding up your brain. That I've heard that too. And unfortunately, with me, it's a lot of crap. A lot of cookies.
Have you tried that before? Have you ever fasted before?
Well, what do you mean by fast? I mean, I can easily go a day or two without food. I don't have any trouble with that at all. But beyond that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a fast? You tell me.
Well, how about this? I'll explain when I don't do it often, but once in a great, like when when I want to look a specific way, I'll fast to lose quick weight. And I've lost. I mean, I did this 3 day fast before, and I got to tell you, on the second day of, and my fast is no food at all, just water. On the second day is when I could start smelling food from miles away. Like I have a Burger King
Uh-huh.
that's like almost a mile down the street, and I could smell the food from my house. That's
Uh-huh.
after 2 days. It gets a little bit cold at night. I don't know why. Something about your brown fat cells starts burning up, and that's what keeps you warm. It gets a little bit cold, and it gets hard to sleep. But I'm constantly thinking about food, and this is the weird thing. I think I could see at night. I heard other people say that they could see at night on the third day, like their eyes get really clear, where they can start seeing at night much better, and colors were definitely much brighter. So I don't know, I don't know if that says anything, but I know for a fact that when we eat less, we tap into a primitive side of us. From what I saw, that was very. I thought it was very cool. It's just the cold is what was hard for me to deal with. The constant cold at night and shaking.
Hey,
But
think.
my body was definitely peaked.
Did you tell me the one time when you called previously that you're in your 50s? Did you say that?
Yes, I'm in my 50s.
Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know about you, but when I was in my 20s and 30s, up to basically about the age of 40, I could lose like 25 pounds in 2 weeks. And you're right. Then I would just stop eating. I wouldn't eat. And I had no trouble doing that at all. None. And you're right. I would drop weight. It's like sometimes I did it because was so working so hard. I never got a chance to eat at all. So but it just happened. But I did it a few times deliberately. I had no trouble doing it. Now I'm 69 now. I can't lose weight to save my life. I shouldn't say that. I've actually dropped a few pounds here in the last few weeks, and so I'm very encouraged. But it's terrible. So it's part of I don't know. It's part of like, how's your metabolism doing? There's my question.
My metabolism is definitely on watch now. Like when I was in my 20s, I was constantly thin, probably unhealthy thin.
I
But
was too. Right.
yeah, but the food probably when I was younger was different, probably from the foods now. I do think that the foods now are loaded in nutrients, whether good or bad, I don't know. But I mean, just a simple burger from this time period is definitely different from a burger from when I was younger. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Like I could probably eat 5 burgers from my youth and gain the same amount of weight if I ate one burger from this time period now.
Right.
I think all the processed foods and processes have put so much nutrient. I don't know if it's considered nutrients or whatever it is in there, but it definitely puts on more weight for sure. And I blame that. I don't blame metabolism as much, but that could be also another thing because I was extremely active. But I think it's more the food. Is that what you were asking me?
Yeah.
Jim?
Yeah. But I have another question now. Do you cook? Are you yourself?
Oh yeah, I rarely ever go out to eat. Rarely. I'm very health conscious. I work out every day. I do mixed martial arts. And I rarely ever go. I don't know what McDonald's tastes like anymore or Burger King. The last time I ate at a McDonald's or a Burger King was probably maybe 5, 6 years ago, and I think I just had like a hamburger or something like that, not a Whopper or a Big Mac. Yeah, so I rarely, and I don't eat, I don't drink anything with high fructose. So fructose corn syrup, and that's no any sodas at all, no sodas.
So if you're
That's me.
cooking, I
Mhm.
assume if you're cooking, you're using relatively fresh ingredients, right? So you don't have any problem with that. Do you find? See, I guess my point is I totally agree with you. But the thing is, it's a dichotomy, and that is you have processed food that's now extremely bad, way worse than it was 30 years ago. But yet you can still, if you go to the grocery store and like buy veggies, and stuff, they're still okay, aren't they? I mean, because I cook and I enjoy eating fresh food. It's like
Well, yeah, well, And that's what I mean. Like a hamburger from back in the past, as opposed to a hamburger now, is different. And I say that analogy goes to the vegetables and fruits too. So an apple from back then, compared to an apple from the supermarket these days, maybe 5 apples from back then would be equivalent to 1 apple from today's society, in terms of the supermarket. Now, if you were to go in the woods and eat, like, if you can find them anymore, like an organic apple, I think it would have the type of nutrients as from back then, a similar nutrients. Whereas the apple from the supermarket these days are so GMO, even though they say it's organic, it's still GMO, and so loaded with all kinds of GMO stuff in there so that it can grow fast, because we are kind of overpopulated right now, and these farmers need to grow this type of food fast, and the only way to do it is to inject it or whatever they need to do to get these apples to grow quicker. And at the same time, they need to make a resilience from pestilence or pesticides, or from pesticides. So they use pesticides to make these fruits less resistant, more resistant to bugs and diseases.
So
So
hold on.
we're
I got a question
digesting
for
that
you.
as well.
I got a question for you, and this is not a rhetorical question or a loaded question. I actually want to know what you think, because I don't know what to think about this. Are you saying then that you think?
Yep.
Do you think that the whole organic food thing that we have going on is basically bogus?
I do think so, to a huge degree. I do think it is bogus, uh, but it's safer than the non-organic still. But it's
Right,
not
right.
as yeah.
God, no.
So this is what I heard. Yeah, this is for an example. This is what I heard. Let's say a cucumber is labeled organic, right? And organic basically means it stays fresh from pesticides. It doesn't have pesticides sprayed on it. So, right? So
Right.
what they do is they spray wax on it.
Hold it.
So
They spray what?
wax
They spray.
over the cucumber.
They spray what?
Huh?
What do they spray?
Wax.
Wax. Okay.
Wax. Yeah. So they'll spray a wax around the cucumber, and then they'll spray the pesticides on top of the wax. And so, in that theory, the pesticides never reach the cucumber itself. So then they can say it's organic. And that's the same with the apples and the oranges and all that. Just because they sprayed that wax on there first, now they can say that it's organic because it has that wax. And in theory, that wax blocks the pesticides from touching the actual fruit or vegetable.
And
That's what I heard.
And then ergo the pesticides keep the bugs away, right? That's the idea. So
Yes.
right. So you don't have to worry about the bugs, but you don't have okay, well, that's interesting. I've never heard that before. That makes total sense to me. I mean, you're probably
Yeah.
right.
There's a lot of I guess that's considered a nuance, like chicken that is that they'll label it antibiotic free. Like they don't inject hormones into the chicken,
Right.
That's what they'll label it, hormone free or something. But in reality, what they do is they don't inject the chicken a month or two before they process it, before they kill it. So in the month before they kill it, that's when they don't inject it with the hormones and or the antibiotics. And in theory, the chicken's bloodstream would have burnt off all that antibiotics and hormones within that month or two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Even though that chicken, so they'll inject the chicken with hormones and antibiotics all the way into the last 2 or 3 months or 1 month of the chicken being processed. And that's another way. And they'll call that organic.
Well,
so it's really not.
That doesn't surprise me because, right now, Americans, we eat 8 million chickens every day. That's a shitload of chickens. Right. I don't know.
That's right.
Who is raising that many chickens? I mean, my God, it's unbelievable. And you can still go to Costco and get a chicken that's rotisserie already cooked for $5. Like, really? Oh my God.
When I was younger, I actually worked at KFC, and at that time we called it Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was not called KFC.
Yeah,
It was
right,
called Kentucky Fried Chicken.
right.
And I remember the chicken pieces, drum pieces were much bigger.
Yeah,
And so I went to college. And in college I didn't eat. KFC was still a luxury food. It wasn't like a fast food. It was still considered it was expensive, basically,
yeah,
more expensive than other. So I remember when it was like 2 years into college, I had enough money and I went to KFC and I noticed that the pieces were smaller. And when I did graduate from college, and then I went back home to live with my family, and then I ate at KFC. I noticed that the pieces were even smaller then. And like right now, I'm just shocked at how small a chicken leg is or a thigh. It's just super super small. And I I believe that they're butchering or they're processing the chickens much quicker now. They're not giving these chickens enough time to grow properly. They're injecting them with some sort of like a hormone or whatever they're injecting with these chickens with to make them grow as fast as they can so that they can process them. So maybe back in the days, the chicken would live up to a year and then they'll process it. But now I think that they want the chickens processed much quicker because they want to they need more food or whatever.
yeah.
And so instead of 1 year, they're killing these chickens in like
Have,
6 months
have
or
you ever
3 months or something.
think there might be it might be because of overcrowding too. I mean, it's well known that if you stick pretty much any animal in a smaller space, it doesn't grow as big, you know. And if you have a barn full of thousands of chickens, there's not a lot of room per chicken. I mean, there isn't, and
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about chickens that are raised in cages. I mean, I just think that's inhumane, but whatever. It happens all the time, and it's a really cheap way to do it. And if you're in a little cage, you probably can't grow very much. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's the reason, but just a theory.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to tell you what my generation was like. I remember your guest a minute ago said that she was Generation Z or X or something like that.
Yeah,
And I am also Generation. Yeah, I think I am Generation X. I think I'm between X and Generation Me. There's a Generation Me too that came right after X. I'm somewhere in between there. And this is what my generation was like. When I worked at KFC, we would close the door at 10:30, right? And if a customer came in at 10 o'clock, we would just give them everything for free. Like the manager and whoever the managers and the assistant managers would just give the customers stuff for free.
Yeah,
Because at the end of the day, we would throw away. And I don't know if your high school was like mine, but at the end of the table in high school at the lunchroom, there'll be a big trash can where you would throw your food in there,
yeah,
and we would throw away four of those trash cans filled with chicken or food every day. So instead of throwing away, we were like, the theory of the manager is just give it away. And that's what they did. So if somebody came within the half hour or maybe 20 minutes before the restaurant closed, we would just give it away because it's either that or we're going to just throw away buckets of food.
yeah. Well,
the generation, go ahead.
There's a move right now.
Sorry.
Somebody's trying to there's like nonprofit organizations trying to organize this, that instead of throwing that food away, you give it away to the homeless too. You know, that's not a bad thing. But I mean, it is amazing how much food we throw away. It's amazing how much stuff we throw away. I'm constantly amazed by this. I think one of the huge problems we're going to have in the future, and we have it already, but nobody notices it, is garbage. I mean, you can't. We're now. There's two ways we deal with our garbage. We either burn it or we bury it. Well, you can't go on burying it because I don't know where you live, but there's giant landfills all over the place. I mean, we're going to run out of that. You can burn it, but on the other hand, there's weird stuff that goes into the air. Some of it doesn't burn. You know, I mean, I've been saying that some scientist has to come up with literally some sort of ray that will disintegrate almost anything and bring it down to atoms. If you could do that, so the person that does that makes $1 trillion. That's what I think. I don't know how to do it, but but seriously, you ever think about this? The trash, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember when I was younger, my dad used to drive me through these mountain areas where they were piling the trash on this. And I always knew that, okay, we're going to start coming to the trash dump. And it was in the countryside area because of the smell. And then I would see the seagulls fly on top in circles. And then I was like, okay, here comes the trash dump. Now, 20 years later, that trash dump is a mountain now.
Yeah,
They
that's
have
right.
covered it with dirt, and there's
It-
grass.
It is.
And there's these little pipes. Yeah. And they're starting to pop up more and more. There's a lot of them, like you say. And I don't know if they're ever going to decompose. I mean, I hear plastic is supposed to last like 100 million or 100,000 years?
Yeah, something like that.
Forever.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Especially those plastic
eventually it's
bags.
gonna run out of space.
It's like, and those plastic, they don't decompose at all. And I don't understand, and so I don't know if you've seen any of the supposedly biodegradable plastic bags, but they don't work worth shit. Now somebody has to figure this out. I mean, how come you can't make a plastic bag that's a good plastic bag that decomposes? I don't understand. How hard is it? I'm not a chemist. I don't get it. But it's like, I don't know.
It's a money issue from what I know. Like the tires, car tires. That's also a big issue too. There's a lot of car tires, and car tires actually has oil in it, and they can extract the oil from the car tire, but it's really expensive to extract the oil from the car tire. So in profit, they wouldn't make any profit. The energy that it would take to extract the oil from the tire would be not profitable at all. And that's why they don't do it.
Yeah. So what do you do with the tires? I have no idea.
They throw them.
Yeah, that's right. They throw them in a big pile, and then they put a bunch of dirt over it, and they build a giant hill.
Yeah.
How often you can't do this forever? This isn't going to work.
We cannot. Yeah, we cannot do this forever. I live next to Lake Ontario, which is like the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
And in my youth, I would see these boat barges. Every time I would go to the pier, I would see these huge boat. I don't know if you ever saw these things, but
oh yeah, I lived on the Mississippi River. The barging was a regular thing. We saw them all the time.
Oh, okay. So you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where it's a big boat that has trash in it.
Yeah.
And they would drive it into the middle of the lake and just dump it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what, yeah.
Right.
So they're just, it's not a solution.
You can't do that forever either. I mean, I'm sitting here laughing, but no, it's true. It's like this isn't going to work. It's like so at some point you got to figure this out. So I don't know if that's going to be during our lifetime or what. I also, like I said, the people that figure this out are going to make a fortune. They really are. It's going to be just a huge deal because we take this completely for granted. But the fact of the matter is, garbage is a huge deal. It really is. And speaking of which, I got to take the garbage out tonight. Sorry, I'm an old married guy. It's like I know my place.
Yeah, garbage is definitely. I think it's with garbage, we are going to have to find a way to recycle a lot of this. That's the only way. I mean, that's the only way. I don't see plastic decomposing. And definitely glass is another thing. I don't see glass decomposing really quick. And the metals that we have right now, I don't see that decomposing either. And instead of just digging out from the land to get more minerals or material to make new ones, I'd say that we start utilizing the ones that we have now, the plastic bottles, plastic bags. Hey, do you still have plastic bags in your supermarkets? Here in New York, they don't allow.
They've been trying to ban them here for a long time, but the temporary solution now is that you have to pay for them. So we still have them, but I don't know if that's going to go away soon or.
Okay. Yeah, in New York, they don't have plastic bags here, so you can't. If you go to a supermarket or a gas station and buy some, they don't give you a plastic bag.
Right.
And they don't give you a paper bag either. So you have to bring your own bag, and then you just put whatever you buy in your own bag and carry it out. I'm surprised in your area.
They don't give you paper bags either, huh?
Now Walmart recently started giving you in my area, really, but it's very rare. If you could find a Walmart that has paper bag, it's very rare,
Uh-huh.
very rare. But the majority of places don't. I hear Burlington Coat Factory does, but that's also very rare. Like once in a great while, they'll have them or something like that. So it's not a consistent thing. The majority of businesses here still require you to bring your own bag.
Interesting. No, we don't have that yet.
Yeah.
You know. So
Okay.
and I've heard different things about the paper bags. People say it actually takes more energy to construct a paper bag than is a plastic bag. But the thing is, the paper bags are completely biodegradable. So there's that. So I don't know. I mean, people. That's one thing people have said. We're not going to run out of wood. We aren't. I mean, the logging industry is very good about replanting, and they got this down to a science now. The trees are entirely renewable. I mean, that's not going to be that's not a problem. But the plastic stuff, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, when I was growing up, we were told that paper bags were bad. That's why plastic came out.
Yeah,
about
I know.
that because there wasn't enough trees.
Right.
So maybe at that time they didn't have a structure to replant the trees, and so they were thinking that there was going to be a deforestation issue if we keep using paper bags, and that's why plastic was more the alternative. But maybe that's not true anymore. Maybe we can go to paper bags.
Well, the other thing is,
I don't.
I actually think the plastic bags are cheaper. So there's that, which is not a good reason. But no, I think as far as I know, the paper bags are completely kosher. So, did you ever see this? No, go ahead. Please go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I'm going to have to get off here in a few minutes too. South Park did an episode. I can't remember where they're talking about. You're talking about like processed food, about the fake meat, the impossible meat, the Beyond Meat, and it was a Stan says to the guys who says, all our lives you've been telling us not to eat processed food, and now they're pushing us processed food. I just thought it was kind of funny. It's like, man. All right. Hey, think I gotta go. So
all right,
I gotta get off.
Having me on.
We have I love talking to you. Fascinating conversation. Please, call anytime. So no, I got a 2-hour limit here, so I have to basically wrap things up. Yep. So you take care of yourself. All right.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's Think. Always a fascinating gentleman. Lots of ideas all the time. And I'm getting a little tired here, so I did not mean for that to sound facetious if it did. So that was not my intent. So anyway, we're gonna wrap this up for tonight. Okay, here's the deal, folks. First of all, like I said, we're gonna have a memorial show for Jazz Shaw either on Wednesday or Thursday night. I've changed this now. Up until recently, we changed the format of the show around November 1st. It's more audio now than it's video. And those of you who watched on Rumble can see that we no longer have the virtual green screen, all that set stuff, and all that sort of stuff. There's another thing we're going to do till at least to the end of the year, at least through January, and I don't know whether we'll continue it after that. But now I'm not going to do a show if we don't have a guest. That's basically the deal. The one I did, the solo show I did the night before the election is the last one, and I knew that. I advertised it as such. So we've basically advertised the show as being Monday through Thursday every night up until we've been advertising up till now, and that's not going to be the case anymore. Now we're only going to do it unless we have a guest booked. Now that's the amazing thing is, okay, so I did a count after 1 year. We're scheduled for 4 shows a week. It turned out we were doing almost exactly 3 shows a week because I was missing so many for all sorts of reasons, family stuff, technical issues, all sorts of stuff. But now I'm going to change the website and our social network stuff so that it's no longer going to say Monday through Thursday. We're going to do shows when we do them, and we're not going to do a show if we don't have a guest. So So we might have another guest this week. I do not know for sure yet. I'm still working on that. But like I said, we're going to at least do one more show with Jazz Shaw. We're going to play his last interview from August 29th. And Ed Morrissey's boss at hotair.com is going to do a little thing too. So, and that we're going to run that either on Wednesday or Thursday. I don't even know yet for sure. So at any rate, so I'm out of here. I want to thank you folks for watching, really, and listening. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it a lot. Good night, Uncle Donnie. Good night, Esperanza. And good night to you, wherever you are. Happy Veterans Day, and happy Veterans Day, Uncle Donnie. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.